Aaron drifted alone in deep space, inside a small cargo ship that looked weak compared to the giant war vessels that ruled the stars. His ship carried only medical tools, food packs, and simple machines for repairing life systems. He was a trader, but more than that, he was a helper. He traveled from one remote station to another, helping forgotten colonies survive. He did not carry weapons because most regions he visited were peaceful. He trusted in talk, patience, and fairness, but the universe did not always return such trust. The stars outside his window were quiet and cold. His ship moved through a long travel path, guided by silent engines and soft control lights. Aaron checked his supplies one more time. The delivery was important. A mining station on the edge of known space had sent an emergency call. Their medical systems had failed, and people were getting sick. Aaron had answered without delay. Without warning, warning lights flashed red. A loud signal echoed through the cockpit. Several unknown ships appeared around him, dark and sharp, their hulls marked with the symbol of a powerful alien empire. Aaron slowed his ship, knowing resistance would only make things worse. A harsh voice filled his cabin through the communication channel, ordering him to power down and prepare to be boarded. Aaron followed the orders. Heavy clamps locked onto his ship. Moments later, armed guards forced their way inside. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with glowing eyes and heavy armor. Their weapons hummed with dangerous energy. Aaron raised his empty hands and stood still. They searched his ship from front to back. They took every tool, device, and piece of equipment, even the smallest cutting blade and data chip. They laughed when they saw he carried no weapons. To them, a human without weapons was nothing, just another weak creature drifting in space. They bound his hands and dragged him onto their ship. Aaron stayed calm, breathing slow and steady. His heart beat fast, but his face showed no fear. He carefully observed everything: the structure of their ship, the movements of the guards, the layout of the corridors. His eyes took in details others would ignore. Soon, they arrived at a massive prison station that floated near a dead star. It was a dark metal giant, covered in towers, shields, and weapon systems. Countless ships docked and left, carrying prisoners from across many worlds. The station was known as a place of silence and loss. Few who entered ever returned. Aaron was pushed through cold metal halls into a processing chamber. Machines scanned his body. Cold light passed over his skin. Data screens filled with information. The aliens spoke among themselves in sharp tones, discussing his weak physical form and simple biology. They labeled him harmless. After hours of testing, they sent him to a prison block deep inside the station. His cell was small, cold, and empty. Only a thin sleeping pad and a metal bowl rested in one corner. A faint light glowed from the ceiling, never turning off. The door sealed shut with a heavy sound. Silence followed. Aaron sat on the floor and closed his eyes. He listened. He felt the vibration of distant engines, the hum of energy systems, and the faint steps of guards passing by. He let his breathing slow. Fear tried to rise, but he pushed it aside. Panic would not help him. Thought and patience would. Hours later, a small opening in the wall slid open, and food was pushed inside. The meal was simple and tasteless. Aaron ate slowly, saving part of it for later. Even now, he planned ahead. Through the narrow energy barrier of his cell, he could see other prisoners. They were from many species. Some were small and thin, others tall and heavy. Their eyes carried the same look, tiredness mixed with hopelessness. Many had been here for years. A soft voice came from the cell beside him. It belonged to a short, blue-skinned being with large, dark eyes. The prisoner introduced himself as Leo. He had once been a teacher on a peaceful water world. The Empire had destroyed his home and taken survivors as workers and prisoners. Aaron listened carefully. He did not speak much about himself. Instead, he asked questions. He learned about guard routines, food schedules, punishment zones, and the silent disappearances that happen when prisoners cause trouble. Leo explained that escape was impossible. The station was too large, too secure, and too heavily guarded. He simply nodded and stored the information in his mind. Days passed. Aaron adjusted to the routine. Every cycle, guards marched through the halls. Food arrived at the same times. Power levels dipped slightly during system changes. Cleaning drones moved through fixed routes. Everything followed patterns. Aaron studied those patterns. He exercised quietly inside his small cell. Push movements against the wall, slow controlled breathing, muscle tension and release. He kept his body strong without drawing attention. His face always showed calm and weakness when guards passed. He lowered his eyes and moved slowly, just as they expected. One cycle, a guard entered his cell to perform a physical check. The guard pushed Aaron roughly, expecting no resistance. In that brief moment, Aaron shifted his weight, twisted his body, and redirected the guard's force. The guard stumbled and nearly fell. Aaron instantly stepped back, lowering his head. The guard growled but said nothing, assuming it was a mistake. But Aaron had learned something important. Their balance was poor. Their armor limited their movement. Their reactions were slow. Across the block, prisoners whispered about the human. Some said he was strange. Others said there was something different about his eyes. Leo watched him with quiet curiosity. One night cycle. Alarms echoed faintly in distant parts of the station. Power flickered for a moment. Guards rushed past. Aaron pressed his ear to the wall, memorizing the timing of the energy shifts. Later, Leo whispered that a prisoner group in another sector had tried to escape. They had failed. Most were taken away. None returned. Aaron closed his eyes and imagined the station's layout based on all the information he had gathered. He mapped it in his mind. He saw the hallways, security zones, guard posts, and power nodes. Slowly, a picture formed. The station was strong, but it was not perfect. It relied too much on machines. It trusted too much in fear, and it underestimated those it imprisoned. One day, a new prisoner arrived in the block. He was a tall, thin alien with silver skin and glowing green eyes. His name was Varn. He had once been an engineer for the Empire itself. He knew their systems better than most guards. Aaron listened as Varn spoke quietly about energy grids, shield controls, and security loops. Aaron, he described maintenance tunnels that even guards rarely used. He explained how certain power cycles created brief blind moments in surveillance. Aaron thanked him and shared what he had learned about guard movements. A silent exchange of knowledge began. Soon, more prisoners joined their quiet talks. A heavy stone-skinned miner named Brack, a fast-moving insect-like scout named Rel, and a gentle healer named Mira. Each carried pain, loss, and anger, but they also carried hope, buried deep inside. Aaron never spoke of escape directly. He only asked questions, shared small plans, and tested reactions. He built trust, slowly. One cycle, a violent guard entered the block and began to punish prisoners for no clear reason. He struck Leo hard, sending him crashing against the wall. Something cold and sharp rose inside Aaron when the guard turned toward Aaron, mocking him. Aaron acted. In a single smooth motion, Aaron stepped forward, caught the guard's wrist, twisted it, and used the guard's own weight to slam him to the floor. The energy weapon flew from the guard's hand and skidded across the corridor. For a moment, silence filled the block. Aaron released the guard and stepped back, lowering his eyes. The guard scrambled away in fear, calling for backup. Alarms blared. Heavy doors slammed shut. Other guards rushed in, weapons raised. Aaron stood still. He did not resist as they stunned him and dragged him away. They took him to an isolation chamber. Cold light burned his eyes. Machines probed his body again. The aliens argued loudly, confused and angry. They could not understand how a weaponless human had overpowered an armed guard. After hours, they returned him to his cell, placing heavy restraints on his hands and ankles, but their fear was clear. Across the block, prisoners stared at him in awe. Hope stirred in their tired eyes. Leo whispered, "You showed them?" Aaron shook his head slightly. "They still think I am weak," he said softly. That is their mistake." From that moment, everything changed. Guards kept their distance. Surveillance focused more on Aaron. Security levels increased. But Aaron had already learned what he needed. He had seen fear. He had seen weakness. And he had seen that even the strongest empire could be shaken by a single human who refused to accept defeat. As he lay on his thin pad, staring at the endless ceiling light, Aaron allowed himself a small, quiet smile. The game had begun. Aaron woke to the cold metal of his cell and the faint hum of the prison station. He flexed his fingers and tested the restraints. They were heavy, but not unbreakable. He remembered the way the guards had handled him and the mistakes they had already made. Every moment he spent in this prison added to his knowledge, and knowledge, he knew, could be as powerful as a weapon. Over the next cycles, Aaron began to move more carefully around the cell, practicing balance, control, and silent motion. He could feel the walls, the floor, and even the ceiling as extensions of his senses. With each passing day, he grew stronger and quicker, learning to turn small spaces into training grounds, pushed against the wall, lift against the metal bars, roll and twist in confined space. Every motion sharpened his body, while keeping the guards unaware. Every movement of the guards, every flicker of light in the corridors, every sound of the drones became a pattern he memorized. He observed their behavior during shift changes, how they spoke, how they reacted to alarms, how they interacted with each other. Humans had an ability to notice details that others often missed, and Aaron used that gift to see opportunities where the Empire saw none. Aaron began sharing quiet conversations with prisoners in nearby cells. Varn, the engineer, told him about maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the station. Brack, the heavy miner, described the areas where supplies were stored, and Rel, the scout, talked about hidden cameras and sensor blind spots. Each piece of information was small, but together they began to form a picture of the station that no alien guard could see. One cycle, during a routine meal delivery, Aaron noticed a guard taking a shortcut. The guard moved confidently, believing the cameras would cover him. Aaron followed the pattern with his eyes, memorizing every turn, every shadow, every sound. That night, he lay on his sleeping pad, imagining the route, planning steps, and testing scenarios in his mind. Escape was still impossible with their weapons and numbers, but he saw cracks, small openings, weaknesses in their perception and confidence. Aaron also tested the physical limits of the guards in small ways. A guard came to his cell to enforce a routine check. Aaron moved subtly, shifting his weight, rolling a little, and blocking just enough to unbalance the guard. The guard stumbled and muttered angrily but did not strike. Aaron had learned that their strength depended on expectation and fear. Remove both, and they faltered. Meanwhile, the prisoners noticed small changes in themselves. Leo, once quiet and hopeless, began to stretch his body, learning moves from Aaron that could help avoid punishment. Mira, the gentle healer, practiced moving silently and observing the guards. Even Brack, strong but slow, learned patience and timing from Aaron. Without words, he was teaching them that humans could adapt, survive, and fight in ways the Empire did not understand. One cycle, a sudden alarm shook the prison, the lights flickered, and the hum of engines stuttered. Guards rushed past, moving faster and shouting orders. Aaron pressed his ear to the wall, feeling the vibrations of the power fluctuations. He realized these moments could create openings, if timed correctly. Aaron shared his observations quietly with Varn. The engineer nodded, understanding immediately. These short drops in energy could blind some cameras and weaken force fields, Varn whispered. But timing is everything. Miss it, and you die. He had learned to wait, to watch, and to act with precision. Speed alone was not enough. Knowledge multiplied strength. And humans, he thought, were masters of combining both. Days passed, and tension grew in the prison. Guards became more aggressive, sensing that something was different about the human. Other prisoners whispered about his calm, his strength, his ability to move unseen. Some began to hope again. But the Empire, proud of its control, had never expected hope to spread among the weak. One night, the guard who had stumbled before returned. He entered Aaron's cell, weapon in hand, intending to intimidate. Aaron did not flinch. The guard struck once, and Aaron shifted, redirecting the force, avoiding the weapon, and moving the guard off balance. He did not strike aggressively. He moved precisely, using only the guard's weight and momentum. The guard fell, stunned, not fully understanding what had happened. Other guards outside the cell heard the noise and rushed in, but Aaron slipped into the shadows of the corridor with a speed they could not follow. He paused, heart racing, listening. The alarms were not triggered. The guards were confused, searching. Aaron moved back into the safety of his cell unnoticed. He had learned something critical. They could underestimate him, but one mistake from them could become a chance for survival. The prisoners' morale grew. Aaron shared small tips about moving silently, hiding, and observing. He told no one directly about escape yet. He only planted ideas, small seeds of thought that could grow when the time was right. Every whisper, every observation, every quiet training session was part of a preparation no alien had foreseen. Aaron also studied the high-ranking officer who arrived to inspect the station. The officer was cautious, arrogant, and proud. He believed fear alone could control humans. Aaron watched his movements, noting arrogance and impatience. He studied how the officer inspected cells, questioned guards, and interacted with prisoners. Every flaw became a point of planning. Over time, Aaron began to assemble a mental map of the entire station. He combined what he learned from others with his observations. Hallways, maintenance tunnels, surveillance blind spots, power grids, weak points in force fields, all became part of a living blueprint in his mind. He could see possibilities where others saw only walls, barriers, and guards. He also began to observe patterns among the guards, their egos, their routines, their small mistakes. He realized that fear could be used against them, that their overconfidence could blind them to reality. He began to imagine ways to create distractions, to use timing, to turn strength into weakness. The first small success came when Aaron managed to move unnoticed through a restricted corridor during a routine inspection. He touched walls, avoided sensors, and used shadows to move silently. When he returned to his cell, he reported nothing, but his confidence grew. He knew the Empire had underestimated him, and that knowledge was powerful. One night, Leo asked quietly, "Do you really think escape is possible?" Aaron looked at him calmly. "I know it is possible," he said, "but only if we are patient, careful, and act together. Strength is not just in weapons. Strength is in the mind, the body, and the will. Humans have all three. They will learn soon enough that weapons alone do not define power." The prisoners trained quietly. Aaron taught observation, patience, movement, and timing. Each prisoner found small confidence in themselves. They began to trust in each other and in the human who had arrived, weak and weaponless, yet more dangerous than any armed soldier. Aaron continued to study, to wait, to prepare. Each day he grew stronger, faster, and smarter. Each guard who passed underestimated him. Each system that scanned him failed to see his true potential, and each prisoner who watched began to hope again. Aaron knew the Empire believed they had taken everything from him. His tools, his devices, his freedom, but they had not taken the most important thing. They had not taken his mind, his body, or his determination. And those, he knew, were enough to start a change. In the quiet hours, as he lay on the thin pad, he allowed himself a small, quiet thought. One day, he would show the Empire what humans truly were. They thought a human without weapons was weak. They were wrong. Very wrong. The game had only just begun, and Iran was already several steps ahead. The Empire would soon learn that humans were more dangerous than any machine, more unpredictable than any weapon, and stronger than they could ever imagine. Aaron woke to the low hum of the prison station, alert to every vibration beneath his feet. The isolation and training of the past cycles had sharpened his body and mind. He had watched, memorized, and planned. He knew the layout of the prison as if it were etched in his memory. Tonight, he would test the first step of what had been growing silently in his mind: movement beyond the cell. The guards moved through the hallways, unaware of the patterns that Aaron had studied. He waited until their footsteps were soft and predictable, until the shadows shifted just right, and then he moved. Every step was calculated. He hugged the walls, rolled over small obstacles, and avoided the sensors he had memorized. Even without weapons, he felt powerful. The Empire had left gaps, and he was fast enough to slip through them. As he moved through the corridors, Aaron encountered other prisoners. He communicated silently with Mira, Rel, and Brack. They had been watching and learning as well. Each had small tasks: create distractions, watch corners, gather information, and prepare supplies. No words were spoken. Their actions communicated everything. Trust had grown slowly, but now it was enough to act together. Aaron led them through a maintenance tunnel Varn had described. The tunnel was narrow, dark, and smelled of metal and oil. The humming of engines echoed around them. They moved as shadows, silent and precise. Even a single wrong step could trigger an alarm, but they were careful, disciplined, and united. Every prisoner felt the thrill of moving without being seen, and hope began to rise. They emerged near a storage bay filled with supplies. Aaron glanced around, mapping exits and guard posts. A patrol approached, heavy boots and glowing eyes moving in rhythm. He whispered instructions, and the group melted into shadows, timing their movement to the steps of the patrol. The guards passed, unaware that humans and aliens were already weaving through the station like ghosts. As they navigated, Aran realized that the first alarm was inevitable. A guard had noticed a shadow move too fast, too precise. He raised his weapon and shouted. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The station reacted instantly, doors sealing and drones activating. Aran did not panic. He had planned for this. He guided the prisoners through alternative routes, tunnels that Varn had called the Forgotten Paths. They moved quickly, silently, and together. They reached a security checkpoint where an elite guard team had assembled. The prisoners froze. The guards were armed, confident, and expecting resistance. Aran studied them, their patterns, their focus, their arrogance. He whispered a plan to the group, breaking down movement, timing, and distractions. In silence, they executed. Aran moved first, using speed and precision to push one guard off balance, catching him with the weight of his own armor. Another guard swung his weapon, and Aran twisted, redirecting the blow and sending him crashing into a wall. Mira and Rel moved with him, creating small chaos, distracting and confusing the elite squad. Brack lifted a heavy container, sending it rolling to block the path of another guard. The elite team faltered. The human had no weapons, yet he dictated the flow of battle. The prisoners followed Aran, inspired and careful. Every move was calculated. Every step disrupted the Empire's control. Guards shouted, weapons fired, and alarms screamed. But Aran's group moved like water through a blocked channel. By the time reinforcements arrived, the core group was already behind the outer walls of the station, moving toward the control hub. The control hub was their next objective. Aran knew that if they could disable the station systems even temporarily, chaos would spread, giving them a better chance to escape. Varn and Mira worked quickly to override power nodes, while Aran and Brock defended against guards arriving from multiple sides. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the hum of energy fields wavered. The prisoners felt the rush of purpose, a feeling they had not known in years. From the corridor, Aran saw the high-ranking officer arrive, flanked by elite guards. The officer's expression was a mix of rage and disbelief. He had been sent to inspect the station, but instead he was facing chaos he could not control. His confidence faltered when he saw a human, unarmed and calm, move with precision, turning guards against each other. The officer underestimated humans, and that would cost him. Aran used shadows and walls to approach the officer. The guards tried to stop him, but each was too slow or too rigid. He dodged, parried, and redirected, using their own weight and strength against them. The officer raised his energy staff, ready to strike, but Aran anticipated the motion, twisting and using the officer's force to knock him off balance. The officer fell, stunned. For a moment, silence took over amidst the chaos. The prisoners cheered silently, moving quickly to secure escape routes. Brake lifted fallen debris to create barriers. Rel guided the smaller prisoners through narrow passages. Mira and Varn worked on control systems, keeping alarms and sensors from locking them in. Aran moved like a shadow, guiding, protecting, and striking when necessary. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was the leader of a silent uprising. The station's systems began to fail. Doors locked and unlocked unpredictably. Energy fields flickered. Cameras cut out temporarily. Alarms, once predictable, now screamed without pattern. The Empire's strength was unraveling because one human refused to follow their expectations. Aran's group used each moment of confusion to move further, reaching the upper levels where escape pods were docked. The prisoners paused for a moment, catching their breath and regrouping. Aran studied their faces. Fear was still present, but hope burned brighter. They had seen what humans could do. They had seen a leader who refused to be weak, who could turn a heavily armed station into a place of vulnerability. Aaron did not speak much, only giving clear gestures and instructions. They followed without hesitation. As they approached the escape pods, reinforcements arrived, more elite guards with heavy weapons. The final confrontation loomed. Aaron stood in front, positioning the prisoners strategically. He studied the guards' movements, anticipating their strikes and weaknesses. The humans' training and adaptability gave them an edge. Weapons could be powerful, but without thought and awareness, they were limited. Aaron moved first, using speed and leverage to disable one guard, sending him crashing into the bulkhead. Another guard tried to fire, but Rel, swift and silent, knocked him off balance. Mira and Brack coordinated to create obstacles and openings. The elite team began to falter. The officer shouted, but his words carried no weight. He had underestimated the human, and his commands came too late. In the chaos, Aaron and the prisoners reached the pods. He guided them through the launch sequence with Varn's help, using knowledge of the systems to bypass locks. The pods began to lift off, the station shaking with energy fluctuations and chaos inside. Guards shouted, tried to fire, but the humans moved too fast. Escape was imminent. As the pods launched, Aaron looked back at the station. Chaos reigned inside. The Empire's order had been disrupted by a single human and his small group. He felt a rush of satisfaction, not for the destruction, but for the proof it offered. Humans were more than their weapons. Their mind, body, and will could overcome even the most powerful force. The pods moved into open space, carrying prisoners to freedom. Aaron sat in the pilot pod, watching the station shrink behind them. The alarms and flashes of light were visible even from this distance. He allowed himself a small smile, knowing this was only the beginning. Humans had survived without weapons, using only skill, courage, and intelligence. The Empire had made a mistake that could not be undone. In the quiet of space, Aaron turned to the other prisoners. Their faces were a mix of relief, fear, and awe. For the first time in years, they felt free, guided not by fear or force, but by a human who refused to be broken. Aaron spoke softly, not with arrogance, but with certainty. We are not powerless. We are human. And humans are not weapons. They are everything a weapon could hope to be, and more. And the pods continued into the unknown, carrying hope and freedom. The Empire had thought they controlled everything, but Aaron had shown them the truth. Underestimate a human, and even the strongest empire could fall apart from within. The spark of rebellion had been lit, and it would spread far beyond this station. Aaron knew the journey was far from over. The Empire would retaliate, and the fight would continue. But now, humans had proven their worth. They were weapons in ways the universe had never seen. The pods drifted silently through space, carrying Aaron and the freed prisoners beyond the reach of the Empire's station. The lights of distant stars reflected off the metal hulls, casting faint shadows across the interiors. Aaron remained alert, his eyes scanning every readout and every movement. Freedom was temporary until they found safety, and the Empire's retaliation could come at any moment. Inside the pods, prisoners whispered quietly among themselves. Some cried softly, overwhelmed by the sudden relief of escape. Others stared out into space, stunned by the vast emptiness and the knowledge that they were alive. Aaron moved among them calmly, offering guidance and reassurance. He did not speak of victory or pride. His words were simple but firm. They had survived, and that was just the beginning. Varn worked at the control panel, rerouting power and checking the status of the pods. Mira tended to minor injuries, her gentle hands steady even under pressure. Brack adjusted the weight distribution to maintain balance in zero gravity, and Rel moved like a shadow, monitoring sensors for signs of pursuit. Each prisoner had a role, each role a purpose, and Aaron led them without imposing fear. Leadership, he knew, was about clarity and presence, not dominance. Suddenly, a warning flashed on Varn's panel. A fleet of Imperial scouts had detected the missing prisoners and was closing in fast. The pods had no weapons. Aaron's mind raced, calculating speed, trajectory, and possibilities. There was no time for hesitation. He adjusted the course, taking them toward a dense asteroid field known to few, and mapping the twists and turns in his mind. The Imperial scouts followed, firing energy pulses that lit the void. The pods dodged as Aaron weaved through asteroids, using small bursts from thrusters to maneuver precisely. The larger rocks blocked sensors, creating shadows where the humans could hide. The Empire's machines were strong but predictable. Aaron exploited this. Each movement was deliberate. Each dodge a statement that humans could survive against overwhelming odds. As they moved deeper into the field, Aaron's group noticed a small abandoned station tucked behind a massive asteroid. Its hull was old, covered with debris and missing panels, but it had life support and docking bays. Aaron directed the pods toward it. They docked carefully, sliding into the dark entrance with skill and precision. The Empire scouts followed, but the asteroid field made maneuvering difficult, and the humans disappeared from sensors hidden among the rocks. Inside the station, Aaron led the group through narrow corridors. The air was recycled, slightly stale, but breathable. Systems flickered weakly, powered by ancient generators, but they were enough for now. The prisoners spread out, inspecting rooms, finding supplies and securing the entrance. Aaron's eyes scanned every shadow, every corner, aware that even here danger could exist. He had learned that freedom was fragile, and preparation was essential. Varn examined the station's control systems. "We can use these nodes to block incoming scans," he said, pointing to weak panels. "It won't last forever, but it will give us time." Aaron nodded, appreciating the engineer's insight. Mira and Brock worked on reinforcing weak areas and preparing food and water from stored supplies. Even in safety, survival demanded attention and effort. As they rested, Aaron reflected on what had happened at the prison station. The Empire had underestimated him and his small group. They had thought humans weak without weapons, but skill, coordination, and determination had turned the tide. Now, freed from immediate danger, Aaron began planning the next step. The prisoners were not just survivors. They were a spark for something greater. Days passed. The group trained quietly in the abandoned station, building strength, endurance, and cooperation. Aaron pushed them not harshly, but firmly. He taught them how to move silently, how to observe without being seen, how to act decisively when opportunity arose. Each prisoner began to understand the human way. Adaptability, creativity, and courage were more powerful than any weapon. One night the silence was broken by a soft alarm. Aaron moved instantly, checking the sensors. A scout from the Empire had tracked their pods to the asteroid field. They were close, but not yet inside. Aaron directed the group to secure the perimeter. They reinforced doors, set silent traps, and prepared themselves for confrontation. The Empire had strength in numbers, but humans had ingenuity and unity. When the scout breached the entrance, they found a group ready and aware. Aaron led the counteraction. Using movement, misdirection, and precise strikes, he guided the prisoners to disable the intruder. One human, Mira, used a loose pipe to trip a scout. Rel slipped behind another, using speed and awareness to block an attack. Brack lifted and threw debris to create barriers. Even unarmed, humans turned the Empire's strength into weakness. After the skirmish, Aran gathered the group. They had held off a small detachment, proving again that humans were more than their lack of weapons. The Empire had taken tools and technology, but they had underestimated determination, strategy, and the will to survive. Aran knew this message had to spread. Other prisoners, other systems, other worlds, humans were not to be underestimated. Vaughn tapped into old communication channels broadcasting a simple message. He showed the Empire's stations what humans could do when unestimated. The Empire would see that weapons alone did not define power. The broadcast was short but clear. Humans acted with skill, speed, and intelligence. The Empire's officers would receive the message and tremble, knowing the calm, weaponless human could disrupt entire systems. Aran watched as the prisoners absorbed the lesson. They had seen the power of unity and courage, the strength that came from intelligence and coordination. For the first time, many felt not just relief, but hope. The idea that humans were more than tools, more than targets, had been proven. Aran's leadership had created belief where fear once ruled. Days turned to weeks. The group maintained the station, prepared for potential pursuit, and trained for the next opportunity. Aran knew that freedom was temporary and that the Empire would not rest. But he also knew that each act of defiance, each example of human skill and will, created momentum. Humans were capable of inspiring others, leading change, and surviving impossible odds. Aran's mind often returned to the prison station. The chaos they had caused there had been just the beginning. The freed prisoners were a spark, and he knew sparks could become fire. He spoke to the group softly. "We have survived, but now we must prepare. The Empire will not forget. We must show them that humans are not just survivors. We are the force they cannot control, the power they cannot understand." The prisoners nodded, their confidence growing. They were not just fleeing. They were learning, preparing, and understanding that humans were a living weapon, a combination of mind, body, and courage that no empire could fully contain. Aran trained them through every cycle, refining skills, building strategies, and fostering trust. Each prisoner had grown stronger, faster, and more confident. They began to think beyond survival, beyond fear. The Empire had thought humans were defenseless without weapons, but now they would learn differently. Aran had turned despair into action, weakness into strength, and fear into determination. Even in the silence of the abandoned station, the humans felt alive. Each exercise, each observation, each careful movement was a reminder that power did not come from weapons alone. It came from understanding, preparation, and the will to act. Aran had proven this in the prison station, and now he was teaching it to others. Every day was a step toward something greater, a future where humans would not be underestimated, and a galaxy that would tremble at the realization that humans could not be confined, controlled, or defeated by fear or technology alone. Aran stared out into the void of space from the abandoned station, the stars reflecting off the panels around him. He knew the Empire would retaliate. They had seen how a single human and a small group of prisoners could disrupt their systems, escape their grasp, and spread hope. Humans were dangerous, not because of weapons, but because of will, adaptability, and courage. Aran had become the symbol of that danger. The freed prisoners moved efficiently through the station, preparing supplies, maintaining systems, and training. Each one had a role, and each role was essential. Varn monitored communications, looking for signs of pursuit. Mira attended to those recovering from injuries. Brack and Rel strengthened defenses and scouted for external threats. Aaron observed everything, guiding, instructing, and teaching without arrogance or fear. Leadership had become second nature. A warning flashed on the communication console. Imperial scouts had located the asteroid field and were heading toward the station. Aaron calculated their speed, trajectory, and time to impact. There was no time for hesitation. He directed the prisoners to prepare the station's weak points, set traps, and ready escape pods. The humans had no weapons, but they had ingenuity and coordination, enough to turn defense into offense. As the scouts approached, Aaron devised a plan. He would use the station's layout to confuse, trap, and disable them. The asteroids outside provided natural cover. Inside, the narrow corridors, weak gravity zones, and energy fluctuations could all be exploited. Every prisoner understood their role. Silence and precision replaced panic and fear. The first scouts entered the asteroid field. They fired pulses, hoping to damage the station, but Aaron had predicted their approach. He had rerouted energy to shield the outer hull and used the asteroids to block sensors. The scouts found nothing but shadows. When they tried to dock, hidden magnetic clamps and debris slowed their movements. The humans were ready. Inside the station, Aaron led the prisoners through a controlled chaos. They moved quickly and silently, intercepting the scouts at key points. Using leverage, speed, and coordination, they disabled the first group. One scout was tripped by Rel. Another was caught in a reinforced hatch that Brack had prepared. The humans were everywhere at once, unseen, moving with skill that technology could not predict. The Empire had underestimated them again. Aaron guided them toward the control center, where the remaining scouts were attempting to regain command. He studied their patterns, anticipating reactions and exploiting weaknesses. Varn and Mira disabled systems that could harm them, while Aaron and Brack confronted the scouts directly. They used the environment, loose panels, narrow corridors, and forceful momentum to neutralize threats without traditional weapons. The Empire's scouts were powerful but rigid, predictable, and unable to adapt quickly enough. After the skirmish, Aaron gathered the prisoners. They had survived another attack and proven that humans could act decisively without weapons. Each prisoner felt the thrill of competence, courage, and unity. Aaron spoke simply, his voice calm but firm. The Empire will learn that humans are not controlled by weapons. They are defined by thought, action, and will. And when humans act together, nothing can stop them. Varn tapped into the Empire's communication channels, broadcasting their success. The message was clear. Humans survived, adapted, and overcame. Across multiple systems, officers and soldiers would receive this message and rethink their assumptions. Fear of humans would grow, and the spark of rebellion would spread. Aaron had become more than a survivor. He was a catalyst. Days passed as they traveled through uncharted sectors, maintaining the station and training for future encounters. Aaron taught them strategy, movement, observation, and patience. Each prisoner developed skills they had never known, realizing that survival was more than avoidance. It was mastery of self and environment. Humans were not just adaptable. They were unpredictable, creative, and courageous. The Empire's belief that weapons defined power was shattered. One cycle, a distress signal arrived from a colony under Imperial occupation. Aaron considered the risks. The Empire had power, but they also had limitations. A small strategic intervention could inspire others and weaken control. Aran explained the plan. They would go, not as conquerors, but as liberators, using intelligence, timing, and coordination. The prisoners understood. Fear had been replaced by hope, determination, and confidence. The group moved through space with careful precision, evading sensors and patrols. Aran led them into orbit around the occupied colony, studying defense systems, patrol routes, and weaknesses. Each action was deliberate, measured, and designed to minimize risk while maximizing impact. The Empire's forces were strong, but humans could think and act in ways machines could not predict. When they descended onto the colony, Aran divided the group into small teams. Each had a task: disable power nodes, free prisoners, create diversions, and secure escape routes. Movement was silent, coordinated, and precise. Even without weapons, they became a force the Empire could not anticipate. Humans used timing, skill, and the environment to neutralize threats. The Empire's soldiers were powerful but slow to adapt, and humans exploited every flaw. By the end of the operation, the colony was free. Imperial forces retreated, confused and disoriented. The prisoners and colonists gathered around Eren and the group. Hope spread like wildfire. Humans had shown that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome oppression. Aran spoke simply. Weapons are not what make us strong. We are strong because we act, think, and endure. The Empire will see that humans cannot be controlled. As they prepared to leave, Eren looked at the stars. He knew the Empire would not give up, but he also knew that the message had spread. Across the galaxy, humans were being watched, underestimated, and misunderstood. Each act of defiance, each demonstration of skill created momentum. Freedom, courage, and hope were contagious. The group returned to the station, preparing for the next challenge. They had survived, they had liberated, and they had inspired. Aran continued to teach, guide, and lead, instilling the belief that humans were weapons not defined by technology or arms, but by their mind, body, and will. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Underestimate a human, and even the strongest empire could crumble from within. Eren looked around at the prisoners, now warriors in their own right. They had learned that fear could be replaced by skill, that despair could become determination, and that unity could create power. Humans were a force of nature, unpredictable and unstoppable when they chose to act. Eren had started a movement without words, without orders, without weapons. The Empire would learn that humans were not just survivors. They were the spark that could ignite a revolution across the stars.